Hello, my name's Dr. Phil Davies. I'm the founder and director of Mars Registered Limited, based in London, and also of the group called the Martians. That's an entity that are a communal claim to land on Mars. And for those of you who are new to all this, there's plenty of videos that track our history to date. But simply put, if we can do such a thing, we're running two things at the same time: Save the Outer Space Treaty campaign and a Mars land claim. The two go together. First off, I'll say the purpose for doing all this was that we recognize the Outer Space Treaty, which is a hugely valuable entity created in 1967, is getting weak and marginalized. It is the only real law that stops nuclear weaponization of space and stops land grabbing of celestial land by nations. It does a lot of good things, but it's rather woolly. And one of the problems with it, it's not particularly applicable to the modern plans for space exploitation. It's things like mining of asteroids or planets. Now, space exploitation could be a very good thing. It's the thing that's going to power space exploration into the future, but also potentially could be very helpful for the planet Earth and humanity. But at the moment, the space treaty makes it difficult. And so as a consequence, it's getting marginalized. It's getting further marginalized by plans by spacefaring nations to have space forces and to progressively militarize and then weaponize space. It kind of goes against the ethos of the Outer Space Treaty. But again, it's being pushed aside for that purpose. Now, that's a big risk because the space treaty is the only thing to stop serious, aggressive, and nuclear weaponization of space. And if it's marginalized, then nuclear weapons will get up there, 400 kilometers above our head, facing down. Not a prospect we want to see. So we feel that the space treaty needs reinforcement. It needs a top-up treaty. No one wants to open the space treaty itself. It's too valuable to edit, but adding a top-up treaty with a few clarification articles could be very, very helpful, such that it addresses space exploitation, allows it, such that it comes down strong against aggressive space weaponization, which will happen. All countries expect it to happen unless we strengthen existing space law. And finally, deal with space debris. Space debris is another big issue, and it needs strong management right now. Now, we came up with the idea in 2010 that if we could come up with a strong Mars land claim, that actually would potentially shock the committee that's responsible for developing space law into such a way that we would have leverage to affect positive change at that committee to try and get the cohesive spirit to develop a new top-up treaty. So that's what we've done. We've been running with a Mars land claim since 2010. Now, that might sound completely crazy, but if you base it on law that's existing on Earth, admittedly, so we are comparing apples with pears in some senses, but looking at what it takes to claim new land on Earth and the criteria required, and then looking at, well, if space goes the same way eventually, then we should actually have a valid claim to Mars. And so what we've been doing for the last 11 years is showering Mars with extremely high power lasers on a very frequent basis. And that liberates a few extra carbon dioxide molecules from the surface, dry ice form into the atmosphere. And on a much bigger scale, that's the plan for terraforming the planet, giving it an atmosphere, non-breathable, but enough to potentially cause surface water to exist during the summers and potentially have astronauts without wearing pressure suits. Elon Musk's talked about detonating thermonuclear bombs over the poles of Mars to achieve the same thing in the fast way, is what he calls it. Now, we're using strong lasers and liberating carbon dioxide at the molecular level. It's physically trivial and scientifically trivial, but it's more than a gimmick. It's legally relevant. It's very much in keeping with the sort of criteria required to prove factual possession of barren land if it were on Earth. And so We've been doing that for 11 years, and we've also developed a rather robust governance plan for what we would do with the land on Mars. Because literally, you've got to do that. You've got to kind of dream it up in order to be credible. And so that's what we've done. And in the course of propagating that claim, we have three opportunities to spike the United Nations committee called COPIUS, the Committee for Peaceful Uses of Outer Space, into updating space law, adding a top-up treaty to the existing Outer Space Treaty to keep us all safe from aggressive space weaponization primarily. Now, the first opportunity for that comes when we can prove that we've credibly got factual possession of planet Mars. And although I've been saying that for a few years, we really needed independent, external legal expert analysis, subject matter experts who are world renowned to look at what we're doing and comment. And that makes it an easier job for us to sell. So indeed, this is the big news. Although we've taken our claim to the UK High Courts and to the Court of Appeal, and now to the European Court of Human Rights, what we were doing there was trying to compel the UK government to introduce our claim to the United Nations as a problem that needed solved. Now, unfortunately, we weren't able to force the UK government to do that. We didn't really expect to, but we came out through those court cases with credibility because the High Court judge and the Court of Appeal judge and the UK government all said that actually our claim could potentially prove legitimate within international law. It's now waiting for the admissibility phase at the European Court of Human Rights. In truth, we don't expect a lot to come of that, but we like the way we gather credibility through exposing ourselves to the law in this manner. But we did now need external expert analysis. And so we went to Professor Frans van der Donk, who is director of the world's most well-renowned space law consultancy agency called Black Holes. But he's also a professor in the States. He is director of IISL, International Institute of Space Law, and has been for many years. He's one of a very small group of elite space and international lawyers who help shape and create the law. Just 2 months ago, he was the keynote speaker at the US Space Command's inaugural legal conference. He is rather pro-business, so he supports the US Space Act, I would say. He's supportive of the Artemis Accords, but he's very dismissive and disparaging of those agencies out there that we all know who sell novelty celestial deeds, like to the moon, etc. Deeds are not legitimate. There is no such thing as a celestial registry that could do such a thing. So we thought he would be an ideal target. He's mainstream, but he's elite. And so his agency, we targeted, commissioned them to do 2 separate reports on our business, our strategy and our legal positioning. They did a preliminary report before Christmas where he made a lot of key suggestions that we needed to organize our strategy a little bit clearer into where we sat now in existing law, which is called Lex Lata, and what our opportunities were to prepare for and to potentially even shape the law of the future, which is called Lex Ferenda. So we got that, and we've done that. There's a lot of redacting and changing of material on our website required, and actually a genuine pivot shift in our strategy. I'll fully admit that we felt that a pan-multinational communal claim, which is what we've got, that means people from every single country in the world are involved. We felt that escaped Article 2 and Article 6 of the Outer Space Treaty, which generally pushes us towards involving national appropriation. In other words, each country associated with each claimant somehow has its sovereignty brought into the equation. We felt that such a pan-multinational claim could avoid national sovereignty and somehow be internationally registered into private ownership. We've now accepted the word from Professor van der Dunk that that's not necessarily feasible. He has agreed that actually the text of the Outer Space Treaty doesn't necessarily need changed. Core space law can stay intact, but the interpretation of space law does need to evolve for our claim to be progressed towards ownership. But what's really interesting is in his follow-up visit just 1 month ago, he's produced a document called his legal reality check, and that's now published on our website. He produced it specifically for publication. And although it is legalese and it's quite dry and straight, as it has to be, his honest criticism is actually really optimistic. So ultimately what he has said is that everything that we've done around Mars is legal, including activities which can be argued to represent factual possession. Okay, an early stage of factual possession, but no less factual possession. He feels that we've got a good argument for that. That's massive. Thirdly, he does remind us that that factual possession cannot, as the law stands right now, be converted into ownership. But I think most of us would agree that it is highly likely that over the ensuing years, the future of space law will move towards tolerance of some form of celestial property rights as it is on Earth. Perhaps not now, but perhaps when it's more feasible to have a larger human settlement or industry on a celestial body, perhaps the moon first and then Mars later. But at that time, people are going to want to own land, and the law will accommodate that. And what Professor van der Dunk has kindly said is, in his opinion, should that happen, our claim, with the strong justification it has for factual possession already, should be the claim that is first in line for consideration for registration of ownership. Now, that's a big deal because this is perhaps the world's top lawyer in this subject saying all that stuff. So we've got 180,000 members right now, but I think we're going to get a lot more. We're certainly aiming for more than 5 million because we fully admit that whilst our claim to factual possession might be correct, and it sounds like it is, but it could be a lot stronger. It's unique already. There's no other claims that can actually genuinely say that they're in factual possession of celestial land. We can and have been doing so for more than 11 years. But we want to strengthen that. So getting more membership, that will make us stronger. There are other things that we will do to make us stronger, like running scholarships and bursaries for family members from our membership, those who have submitted worthy applications, bursaries and scholarships towards space university and space studies to create the future astronauts and space engineers. These are things that we will be doing over the ensuing years. But our current plan is to move ahead with a strategy that, if successful, would see us ultimately gain registration of land on Mars. And the plan, and it could be 150 years ahead, so look after your certificates and give them to your future family descendants, because it could be they that inherit all that land on Mars. But at that time, we would want to register the land in a split bundle. The title deeds go to the all mankind as per the Outer Space Treaty ethos, and that will be held in trust by the United Nations. So they hold the legal title and they're the trustee. All co-claimants, all ourselves, will get beneficial ownership, a beneficial interest in the land. And at that point, the land will be distributed by lottery into smaller plots. And you'll see that documented in the claim section of the website. These plots of land vary from the smallest 9 square kilometers to the largest 35 square kilometers. They're massive. But again, that's part of the deal. We're looking to have the land held open as common land. Again, that's a new thing. It's very familiar to some national laws, but not yet in public international law. But again, that can be done. We're looking to have a space user group, a small pro-business space user group that effectively has governance responsibility for all exploitation of resources on Mars. Representation on that important committee is only open to spacefaring nations who ratify that new important top-up treaty that we've been talking about. And in doing so, it allows very vibrant space business and space exploitation on Mars. The space user group will sign off the contracts. The mining companies keep all the profits, except a ground rent payment to the affected claimants. Those claimants must part share, let's say half of it, with all other claimants. Now, given that our claimants are pan-multinational, in equitable numbers, the claims have been distributed equitably according to national populations, human rights stats, and state corruption tables. But that means all nations will have the financial benefit coming from the exploitation distributed to them in equitable quantities. That satisfies Article 1 of the Outer Space Treaty, which is one of the biggest hurdles that the space exploitation has in front of it right now. But that's kind of pie in the sky at the moment. That's way ahead. As it stands, what we can now say is that we've got a valid claim to possession of land on Mars, and that has been verified. It's been validated by a legal expert of world renown. And so our ability to move on to the next step is much greater now. So I would say to you, it's highly likely that we're going to get bigger media focus over the next 6 months. Look after your certificates if you've got them. If you haven't yet joined the Martians, then please do, because if you really want to save the Outer Space Treaty to keep us all safe, and you'd like to give your family descendants a massive chunk of land on Mars, or at least a good chance of getting that, then join the Martians. Till next time.